Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the last major night of primaries before this year's midterm elections. It is now 9 p.m. on the East Coast, which means that polls have officially closed in the 7 states across the country holding elections tonight, plus the District of Columbia. We are keeping an eye on all of the results as they come in this hour. Perhaps the biggest single race of the night is the race for the Republican nomination for Senate in the great state of Delaware. It's the race to fill Vice President Joe Biden's old Senate seat. Polling leading up to today suggesting a virtual dead heat between 9-term Republican Congressman Mike Castle and the Tea Party-backed challenger Christine O'Donnell. Right now, with 67% of precincts reporting, Christine O'Donnell leads Mike Castle with 55% of the vote to Mike Castle's 45%. We will have much more on this race in a moment. Polls have just closed in the state of New York, where controversy-plagued Democratic Congressman Charlie Rangel is trying to hold on to his seat tonight that he has held on to for 40 years so far. Mr. Rangel is facing 5 challengers, chief among them New York State Assemblyman Adam Clayton Powell IV. We are still awaiting results in this race, as well as in the race for the Republican nomination for governor in New York. The Republican establishment pick here is Rick Lazio, a man who has run for just about everything in New York State. Rick Lazio is now facing an unexpectedly strong challenge from a man named Carl Palladino, who is most famous essentially for sending out super pornographic and or racist emails like this one. That's President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama dressed as a pimp and prostitute, a photoshopped image Mr. Palladino emailed out under the heading White House Ball. That was one of the more PG-rated emails that Carl Palladino sent out, for which he later had to apologize, even though he explained he didn't really mean the apology. We've got 0% of precincts in on that race, of course, but we will be watching it very closely as results do come in now that polls have closed. But again, the most intriguing race of the night is happening, at least so far, in Delaware, the Republican Senate primary between Congressman Mike Castle and Tea Party-endorsed candidate Christine O'Donnell. Since Christine O'Donnell's challenge to Mike Castle has become unexpectedly strong, her background as one of the most extreme abstinence advocates in the country has attracted lots of attention. And I mean abstinence as in sexual abstinence. We have talked about on the show before the fact that, according to Christine O'Donnell, it is not enough to be abstinent with other people. You must also be abstinent while you are alone. Christine O'Donnell spoke about this to MTV back in 1996. She spoke about her campaign to prevent kids from you-know-whatting while they were alone. We have managed to obtain that tape now, and we can show it to you tonight for the first time.
My name is Christine O'Donnell. I am the president and founder of The SALT. The SALT stands for the Savior's Alliance for Lifting the Truth. We choose sexual purity in our lives. We have God-given sexual desires, and we need to understand them and preserve them to be used in God's appropriate context. We need to address sexuality with young people, and masturbation is part of sexuality, but it is important to discuss this from a moral point of view.
Masturbation is a selfish act, and it's a lustful one, and we are to walk with pure hearts, not adulterous, lusting hearts.
And the Bible is clear in the fact that it says that any sexual act outside of the realm of marriage is wrong.
The Bible says that lust in your heart is committing adultery. So you can't masturbate without lust. The reason that you don't tell them that masturbation is the answer to AIDS and all these other problems that come with sex outside of marriage is because, again, it is not addressing the issue. You're going to be pleasing each other. And if he already knows what pleases him and he can please himself, then why am I in the picture?
Ladies and gentlemen, the possible Republican nominee for Senate in Delaware. Do we have latest figures on this Senate race in Delaware right now? Right now, we have 81% of precincts reporting, and the lead right now of Christine O'Donnell over Mike Castle is 54% for Christine O'Donnell and 46% for Mike Castle. Again, I'm just getting those in my earpiece right now from the control room. Again, that's with 81% of precincts reporting. Christine O'Donnell right now with a 9-point lead. An 8-point lead. over Mike Castle. There it is, 81% of precincts reporting Mike Castle with 46% of the vote, Christine O'Donnell with 54% of the vote. Now, to be clear, the controversy about Christine O'Donnell's past is not about religion. Christine O'Donnell is, of course, free to practice whatever religion she wants. That's the beauty of America. Your private beliefs are your private beliefs. The reason we have tape of her exclaiming about these beliefs is not because these are Christine O'Donnell's private thoughts or beliefs, but because Christine O'Donnell built her career on doing public national advocacy for abstinence. She founded this organization, SALT, in order to promote this idea in public policy and in public life in America, that this is the way that Americans should live. This is the thing she did before running for office. Again, that tape you just saw has not been seen anywhere in 14 years. But if Christine O'Donnell manages to pull off this upset in Delaware tonight, you can count on seeing a lot of that tape over the next 7 weeks. Joining us now for this big primary night is all of MSNBC Primetime. Keith Olbermann, the host of Countdown, Chris Matthews, the host of Hardball, and Lawrence O'Donnell, the host of the soon-to-debut Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Fellas, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good to be here. Pleasure.
Keith, let me start with you. Obviously still awaiting final results in Delaware, but given Christine O'Donnell's now unearthed views on self-abstinence, what would a win for her mean tonight?
Well, we'd have to wait a long time, obviously, for any kind of result based on what you were just reporting. One thing that's important, quite seriously, is that we are talking about vote totals that in aggregate will still be around 40,000. It is obviously important for what happens in the Senate race. It will obviously make another inroad for the Tea Party, which is not necessarily a bad thing in terms of the Democrats' perspective. I think we've been over that, you and I, in our respective shows 10 million times each. But it is still a very small sample, and probably you can find 15,000 people or 16,000 people, which is what she would need for the nomination.
Keith, let me ask you just to hold your thought on that for a moment, just to tell you, and I ask you to return to your thought, because the AP has just called the race for Christine O'Donnell. Christine O'Donnell, according to the Associated Press, has won the Republican nomination for Senate in Delaware. Please continue with your thought there.
Well, what I was saying was exactly correct, obviously, because she won the nomination with that small number of votes. Just what does it mean in terms of a national perspective? It's impossible to say. It's such a small sample that can produce something like that. It underscores it's a bad year to be an incumbent, even if you're an incumbent running for a different job. If you are identified as a politician, you can be defeated by people who act very much and very often like they have never left their own homes before.
Chris, let me ask you about the Republican reaction to Christine O'Donnell winning this. They've obviously been very outspoken in their support for Mike Castle, very worried in an outspoken way about this prospect of what should happen tonight happening. How is the Republican Party going to respond to this?
Well, they're initially going to embrace her because she's their candidate, and they're going to have to win with her. She's part of their victory strategy now. Delaware has to hold as a Republican state if they're to pick up a net 10 seats. They're going to need her to win, so they're going to, whatever they're going to think, they're going to say positive things, and they're going to get somebody in there to discipline her now and make sure she talks about unemployment and taxes and big spending and the issues that'll win for them in Delaware. The old Henry Roth, what's his name, issues. And I think that's where they're headed. I think they're going to do the same thing in New Hampshire. If LaMontagne wins up there, they're going to go around and try to win the Republicans are pretty mechanical about this. They're not going to sit and worry about what she said about the issues you've been talking about 14 years ago. They're going to get her dressed up and ready to win this thing.
Lawrence, though, in terms of what Chris's point there, do Republicans have to worry about the prospect of a Christine O'Donnell, like a Sharon Angle, sort of becoming a national figure defining the Republican Party in this race? Do they have to worry that some of these candidates are so out there they essentially become an extremism mascot for the campaign?
They have to worry, and they have been worried about Christine O'Donnell. This is their worst nightmare in Delaware. Mike Castle would have taken that seat. No one disputes it. He would have walked in. And now Chris Coons is tonight's luckiest man in American politics, county executive in Delaware, who now really has a shot at holding that seat for the Democrats, a seat that more prominent Democrats chose not to run for this time around, feeling that in these midterm elections they tend not to go for the president's party, so this would be tough for the Democrat in Delaware. It's now possibly just the kind of reversal that the Democrats needed. It reminds me of the night that Harry Reid celebrated Sharon Angle winning that Republican primary in Nevada.
Lawrence, what we're looking at right there is Christine O'Donnell campaign headquarters. You can see the jubilation at the headquarters there, and this come from behind candidacy. Now, Keith, while we're looking at those scenes,
looks like a lot of lust from here. I'm not sure, Rachel.
It's a chaste celebration in Wilmington there, as far as we can tell. But I mean, what Lawrence is saying, Keith, about this being a huge gift to Democrats, that is certainly quantifiable in terms of if you look at what Christine O'Donnell's chances are in this race as opposed to Mike Castle in the polling. But is there a bigger danger that she ends up in the Sharon Angles and the Rand Pauls and Joe Millers of the world and Ken Bucks end up defining a new normal for the Republican Party and thus pushing all of American politics that much further to the kook side?
Conceivably. Obviously, every time in its history the Republican Party has gone too far to the far right, 1964 being the primary example, it has gone off a cliff and needed significant repair that has taken at least 2 years on all occasions. However, there is one thing to remember about all nominations, and that is that if somebody can win a nomination, they can win an election. Doesn't mean they're going to. Doesn't mean that there's going to be a Senator O'Donnell or a Senator Angle or a Senator Paul. But the nomination is the nomination, and that puts her on the ballot, and that makes it a possibility that she could be elected. So this assumption, as I was talking about to Howard Feynman about 15 minutes ago on Countdown, the assumption that that everybody had was that she couldn't possibly knock off this veteran, well-liked, middle-of-the-road Republican senator, congressman, rather, who was attempting to make himself senator in Mike Castle. That was the assumption. And now the assumption is she can't possibly defeat a Democrat who's not particularly liberal in Mr. Coons. There's no assumption. There are no assumptions left after this, because as small a margin as this is in terms of actual votes, so is the total vote in Delaware in 49 days. In 49 days, she could say anything or nothing and ride this momentum. And conceivably, if she doesn't screw it up, she could get herself elected senator.
Rachel, I have to say, the power of women voters, you've got to look at it. Step back from the ideology or the cultural issues. There are an awful lot of women that felt frustrated by Hillary Clinton's failure 2 years ago. And I'm telling you, it's popping up. I hear it, anecdotally, I admit. But I really, look at this picture here. These are women, and they may be conservative women, but they're women nonetheless, and they may be joined by other women who just feel it's time for more women to win these offices. And I wouldn't put that apart from the general election calculus right now.
Chris, it is impossible for me to imagine, though, that people who are disappointed that Hillary Clinton did not beat Barack Obama in the primaries are voting in large numbers for a candidate as extreme as Christine O'Donnell. I mean, yeah, chromosomes are there, but the politics are completely opposite. I don't think women voted. I don't think women identity politics and voting could explain two different votes for two different candidates this far apart.
I have spent a big part of my life listening to my fellow liberals tell me, isn't it great the Republicans have gone over the cliff again? Look, they nominated Orrin Hatch in Utah. He's going to be so easy to beat. Hey, look, they might even nominate Ronald Reagan for president. He's such a winger. We can beat him easily. I've heard this all my life, and always what happens is the enthusiasm we're watching there goes right into the general election. And I don't see Democratic events like this tonight. I want to look around and see if we see any in the closing hours tonight where Democrats are that happy about anything.
Well, Democrats...
enthusiasm matters, Rachel.
Enthusiasm absolutely matters.
It's the engine of politics.
Isn't what we're seeing here, though, the enthusiasm of a campaign that was never, before about 5 minutes ago, expected to get anywhere and had no institutional support? That dynamic is very minor on the left compared to the right.
When you see the headlines in the Wilmington paper tomorrow, you're going to see a headline as big as you can believe that she won this thing. It's going to create a lot of... I think these late primaries, guys, are really important. I remember when Schumer beat Maddow late in the game. You don't have to stop now. She goes right in the next couple of weeks and just doesn't stop. It's great to win in the fall.
Lawrence, let me have you get on this. Lawrence, by my count, this means that 8 NRSC-endorsed candidates, 8 candidates endorsed by the National Republican Senatorial Committee have lost this year. 8 of them now. What does this mean for the Republican Party? Is the party just not actually part of the not part of the equation now when we figure out whether or not candidates are viable?
It's certainly not in the primary primary season, and this does create the only hope that the Democrats had. I mean, it's not to say the Democrats are now going to win Delaware, but it is to say they weren't going to win it against Mike Castle. There wasn't going to be any real chance at taking it away from Castle. So now there's a chance. Harry Reid now has a real chance, and Harry Reid's poll numbers were the most disastrous incumbent poll numbers I have ever seen, and his numbers have come back to life and viability because this kind of candidate was nominated against him. That is the only reason Harry Reid is back on his feet, is because of what